All right, so a couple people asked for me to make a video going over some of these questions, so I'm going to just go through the questions that they asked for on this one. Now, when you're doing this, remember, when you see similar figures, you know you're going to have to create ratios that are the same. So even though you can identify which ones are going to be corresponding just by the image, always go by the similarity statement. So x here is part of xy, and xy corresponds with AB. So I'm going to do x over AB, which is 50. So since I went to smaller triangle to the bigger triangle, I need to say consistent. So for the next one, I look and say, well, the only other side that I can use is this YZ, because I don't know what ZX is, so I have to use this since it's the only other number I have. And YZ corresponds with the second and third letter BC, so that's this 40. So since the triangle, the smaller one, was on top, the smaller one needs to stay on top when I create my second one. There's different ways that you can go about doing this, but it's just all about being consistent. And once we have two ratios that are equal, we then cross multiply to solve. So we have 40x is equal to 20 times 50. So 40x is then equal to 1,000. Divide each side by 40. And x is then equal to 25. All right, so then for this next one here, we have triangle ABC is similar. So once I see the similar, I know it's going to be a ratio. So I'm going to be creating two fractions that are equal. So for this one, I have two variables. So I do need to solve for this 2 times. So I'm going to look and say, okay, well, x is part of AC. So I'll do that one first. So x corresponds with the first and third of xz. And xz is here 13. So now I'm going from the left triangle to the right. So x corresponds with 13 because of the way that they're written, the first and third and the first and third. So the only other side I have on this triangle AB, or this triangle ABC, is AB. So then from here, I need to see, well, which side does AB correspond with? Well, it's the first and second letter. So AB is 14.4, and it corresponds with XY. So XY is this here of 12. Once we set the ratios equal, we then cross multiply. We cross multiply. So we get 12x is equal to, well, 14.4 times 13. And that will be 187.2. And then we need to divide each side by 12 to isolate that x. So x is then equal to 15.6. And now, since we already created one ratio of the 14.4 over 12, I know I can just use that again as I'm going through my next question. But now I'm going to be solving for y, and y is BC, so it's the second and third letter, which is YZ. So now it's going to be y over 5, and it's the same thing. We're going to cross multiply. So 12y now is equal to 14.4 times 5, which is then 72. Divide each side by 12, so y is then equal to 6. All right, so for these two, what I would suggest you do is, first, if you look, it says triangle JKL. So that's this triangle here. So since these triangles are overlapping, it's just easier to redraw them. So I'm going to draw them separately. JKL. And now I'm going to fill in what I know. Well, JL, they tell me is 15. And if this is 4 and this is 6, I know the whole side is 10. So I'm going to fill that in as 10. And then I'm going to go to the other triangle. So the other triangle here is GKH. Well, GKH is this smaller triangle that's inside of the other one. So I'm going to write GKH. And then from here, I'm going to fill in what I know. Well, 6 and X. So now when we go to solve it, now these triangles are separated. It's a little bit easier for us to look at it, kind of like how we're used to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, well, X is part of GH. GH is the first and third, and that corresponds with JL, so that's his 15. So I'm going to do X over 15 is equal to, so since I did the red over the blue triangle, I need to say consistent. Well, I know this side is 6, and 6 was GK, and GK corresponds with JK, which is 10. So 6 over 10, and then we're just going to go ahead and solve. So we cross multiply. So we get 10x is equal to, well, 15 times 6 is going to be 90. Divide each side by 10. So x is then equal to 9. And that will be our answer for that one. And for 6, it's similar in that we're going to redraw these two triangles. ABC, well, ABC is a smaller one, so I'm just going to separate that. So B, C. I'm going to fill in what I know, 3, 4, and 5. And then ADE is the bigger one. So then I will fill in the triangle for ADE. So ADE. So now here, though, it says Y goes from here to here. So the whole side is Y. Here it says X is here. So it's the whole thing is X. And then it's 12.5. So for this one, we do need to solve for this twice. So if I want to go ahead and solve for X, well, X is part of AE, and AE corresponds with the first and third, so AC, so that's this here, so X over 4. So I'm going blue over red. So that means when I go to do the next one, I can't do DA because that's also an unknown of Y. So the only other side I know of this ADE triangle is 12.5. So I'm going to put that in my numerator just because I already know that's how it's going to be. And DE is the second and third, so that's BC. So BC is 5. So now we're going to cross multiply. So we get 5x is equal to, well, 4 times 12.5 is equal to 50. So we divide each side by 5. So x is then equal to 10. And now this ratio isn't going to change. Those two sides already correspond with each other. So I know when I'm going to do this next one, here for y, which is dA. So dA corresponds as the first and second, so it corresponds with AB, so 3. I don't need to worry about another ratio because it's already 12.5 over 5. I know that's what it has to be because I used it already. And then from here, we will go ahead and cross multiply. So we get 5y is equal to, well, 12.5 times 3, and 12.5 times 3 is equal to 37.5. And then we divide each side by 5. And y is then equal to 7.5. And that would be your final answer. All right, so when the triangles are overlapping, look at the similarity statement that they give you and separate those triangles. It's telling you how they have to be written out. All right, so then I'm going to go over number 8 and number 12. I do think the word problems personally are a little bit easier because it's giving you the information. Even if you don't draw it, it's giving you the information that you know has to correspond because the shadow has to correspond with the shadow. But if we have our Ferris wheel, that's what it looks like. We're looking at the height of the Ferris wheel. So that would be the vertical line. So the height of the Ferris wheel, we don't know because that's what it asks. So we're going to say X. The shadow we know will run along the ground. And it says it's a 20-meter shadow. So this is what our triangle will look like for that one. And for the person, it says that a 1.8 meter man tall, so that's how tall he is, 1.8, casts a shadow 2.4. So we know that the shadows have to correspond with each other. So that means this 20 corresponds with this 2.4. So I'm just going to do 20 over 2.4 is equal to, well, the height of the Ferris wheel has to correspond with the height of the person. So that'll be 1.8. From here, you cross multiply. So you get 2.4x is equal to 1.8 times 20, which is 36, divided by 2.4. So x is then equal to 15. All right, and then the last question I'm going through with this. So for here, it gives us a triangle of 16, 16, and 20. So it doesn't matter how you fill it in, but there's our first triangle, 16, 16, and 20. And then the second one, it says the longest side has to be 15. Well, 20 is the longest side, so I know 15 has to correspond with that 20. And since these two are exactly the same, it's an isosceles triangle, I know that the other two side lengths have to be the same as well in order for them to be similar. So it doesn't really matter how we correspond with them. I just know that 20 has to correspond with 15 because they're both the largest. And then whichever one we pick can correspond with either the other two unknowns because they're the same. So since I did the black triangle to the purple, it would then be 16 over x. We cross multiply, so we get 20x is equal to, and 15 times 16 is 240, divided by 20, so x is then equal to 12. So that means that the other two sides have to be 12 in order for this to be correct. And same thing, since it's an isosceles triangle, we didn't really have to think about how to correspond. We knew that the largest one has to correspond with the largest one, and the other two are the same, so it's going to follow the same ratio anyway from the way it's growing. All right, that's it for this worksheet. Then I'm making a video going over some of the questions in the other one.